Hello and welcome everyone. Again, in this presentation will be a short and brief presentation, just some tips and um, for in training medical resident and fellows. And these tips I found it really useful, and I thought to share them with you in this presentation. So the content of this presentation will be we will talk about planning before you start your training, and even every end of year before the second year, or just about to start your training, you could do planning. And then we will talk about the attitude. How would you set your attitude for training and timing? We will also chat about timing and just a few points about that, and internal dialogue and self-talk and communication with others. And then we will just chat about finances. So starting with planning. Now, what do I really mean by planning here is not the common form of planning and to organizing yourself into schedule and putting yourself on certain time frame for doing things during your day. That's not what I mean by planning in this. I actually mean here that you have a long and short term targets. And this question will pop into your mind, and you're probably going to ask yourself during the training and when it's really getting tough on training. And these are the most important question. Why are you in this training? Why do you want to get trained in this specific or particular specialty, or why do you want to acquire skills in this? So, and this is really very personal. So when you decide to have like long term goals, this is sometimes set already before you start your training. And um, I found that this answering these questions will actually help you to perform well in your training, and having a clear answers written down in paper and accessible for you so that you can remind yourself about them. It's really, really, really helpful. And the second thing is about planning. So if you're going to plan your training, you need to um, understand what's the expectations from you during the training, what the required level on each milestone each year of the training, whether it's residency or fellowship. What is the required level of expectations from you, and to match your expectations with that. Because I found that in most of cases, trainees put on a higher expectations from um, for themselves, and then they get really quickly burned out in the first few months, and then they struggle by the end of the training. And so balancing the expectations is really helpful so that you can budget your efforts and plan ahead how is your training year will go. And the only way to know that is to read through the curriculum or the training guidelines, and to see what's the uh, targets that's set for you. And you could ask seniors on the training years, whether you're doing residency or um, people who went through the fellowships, and ask them about what are the expectations from you. And you just try to match these two so that you can function really well at that level of the training required from you. And the third point in planning is, how do you imagine your daily routine? It's really critical to have an imagination in your mind. How is your day would look like going to that training? Waking up in the morning, What would be your daily routine during weekdays? And most importantly, what's your daily routine during weekends? Especially if you're having very limited time for yourself and your family during the training. Sometimes the residency training can get really tough. So you should plan ahead. How is your weekend going to look like, at least? And how is your off days routines? What you're going to do? And what will be the contact and communication with your close and larger family? What days are you going to try to contact your family? You should at least have an idea going um, through the years of training. How are you going to have your routines? Because our body and mind likes to have routine for our daily work and as well as for leisure. It's better to have certain routines for that as well. So that's what I mean by planning. These 3 points is really important. I would really advise you to go over them, and you can pause at any time during this presentation to go back to check them. Moving to the next point is the attitude. And attitude is really very vague for newly trainees. What it really means is that the way you approach your daily routines and your daily activities and your daily work. So, the best way to approach any training, residency, or fellowship higher training is to have a learner's attitude. And a learner's attitude basically is a curious type of attitude. So you're really curious about what you just heard, you comparing that with what you know, and you're curious to learn more about management, and you go into references and do cross-checking and validate informations, and you really learn that way by comparing, contrasting people's experience with what's in the literature, and its different styles. Every physician has his own style of approaching medical problems, but there are certain general guidelines that in some way guarantee a standard of care delivered to the patient. So going through a training process, even though you might have the best knowledge or the best understanding of a certain conditions, it's always better to have a learner's attitude, because it helps you to move forward during your training, and it helps you preventing you from getting into struggles and some miscommunications with the teachers and colleagues, as well as colleagues at work, nurses, and other professionals. So always have a learner's attitude, despite all the responsibilities you will be going to have. It's better to be all open on that part. And the third and last point in attitude is to be a patient advocate, and remember that you're doing this training to gain more knowledge and experience and to learn some new stuff. But by the end of the day, it's human lives. It's a suffering that you're human suffering that you're dealing with to relieve, and you need to be a patient advocate. Patient might not talk to any physician than you, the trainee, and sometimes he might confess very important and sensitive details. You need to have an active listening to your patient. And what you listen for is the tone of words and picking up any cues of their body language, sensing their body cues. And all this is something you can learn. You might not have the skills, but it's very learnable. And as long as you have it in your mind that you will build and active listening and advocating your patient's care, then you will be developing this moving on through your training. And the point about team key player. So making any good difference being a member of a team. So you have to have this attitude in your mind that you'll be a good team. You will be a team key player. Build your credit history. You have to build your credit history, and you can do that only by going extra miles. Just like in finances and banking, going through this training and all this struggle, there is credit for all the great work you do, and you'll always get compensated. And most of the time, it will not come from the same part or the same person you did the extra miles for. It will come from another collaterals and from different ways. But you will have your credit history, and people will trust you more if you're a good key team player, and you're really going extra miles and doing things very well. So you can build your credit history, and trust me, and one day during your training, you will need to have a good credit history for people to vouch for you and support you. And yeah, things happens in life, and if you don't really pay attention to that, you might struggle with going through all these hurdles. Now, moving forward to timing, and I don't mean by timing here punctuality and arriving at work or at the training. That's a fairly straightforward. It goes without saying. This is fair expectation for you as a professional later and as a trainee. But what I mean by timing here is to give time for your own growth. Don't rush results. Yes, growth will come over time. And despite all the huge efforts you're doing throughout the training, the results might not show right away for all your great efforts. So I really advise you to give time for your personal growth and work to improve time efficiency, because you the medicine by the end of the day is a job, but and you will have certain time for yourself out of work and for your family. It's really important to be time efficient, and efficiency really come at the end of a spectrum of learning. But you could try to work on improving efficiency gradually for the simple stuff, simpler way of doing things and work and training. And yeah, you have to build a time efficiency strategy. You have to be time efficient so that you can benefit from most of your time at work, and you will have a great time for your family, and you'll have quality of life time. The point about self-talk and communication. What I mean by self-talk and communication, that you should actually be clear and honest with yourself about your abilities and when you should ask for support and help. As unless you have that honest and clear dialogue with yourself about what you can do in a challenging situation, you will never be ask for help, and at some point you might ask for help late, and it will not be good for yourself and for your patient, and it's better for you to know your boundaries and in terms of knowledge, experience, and always ask for support and help. And then you have to develop a habit of active listening. It's a cornerstone of communication. If you're not actively listening to the communication or the discussions that you have with your supervisor, with your colleagues, or with your coworkers, active listening is important, is really important, and it's the cornerstone for communication, for good communication. The third point is to work on improving your communication with yourself and with others. So being honest, clear with yourself, and active listening to other people in your workspace needs to be a continuous process of improvement, because if you don't work on them, they will weaken and they will slowly become not functioning or not doing well for you, and you need to continuously work on improving them. Now, the last point is finances. And in this point, I don't really mean to budget your money or planning anything like that. I really want to talk about important tips to you should work on improving your financial literacy. And I found that being in the profession of medicine, we have little to no time to work on financial education. And it's really important as a professional, as a physician, and as a working individual to have a financial literacy and to educate yourself a little bit about the financial situations of your senior colleagues who graduated from the program, and to build a trustworthy relationship with them, because it's really important, and it's going to help you a lot in finding jobs later and budgeting your financing and investment. Avoid risk investments during training, please, because it's a training time, and it will really could hurt you if you have a risky investment, and I mean high risk investment, and then it will affect your training and performance. It will create more pressure on you. So I would recommend you to avoid high risk investments during your training years.